Now we're good. We're live. Cluster Ops.
Coming to you live from WKRP.
Oh, boy. And let's see. Oh, good. We've got a couple of people. And Justin, are you on? Are you here? I haven't seen you hosting our meetings before.
It's Justin's ghost.
See you. Awesome.
It's a lifelike impersonator.
That makes a ton of sense. We have a couple of topics on the agenda. Got to find it to actually.
Yep. Bitly case Klops.
Bitly case Klops, yeah.
It's the only way I remember it.
That's the easy way to do it, to get there. And we've been inactive for a couple of meetings, so we have some build-up of agenda items. Yeah, here I'll actually drop in the link to the actual link. Oh boy, okay. Yeah, so this is just past forward items. I think that top of the agenda is probably just, oh shoot, yeah, you're going to ask me about GitHub Teams and flags, aren't you? Is just status of where we stand. We haven't established the momentum that we wanted. Right, attendance isn't where we'd like, and I think we've been talking about that a bit. I'm interested to get people's broader perspectives on it, and then I think Anna, Jason, I've had some thoughts about it. Hold on a second.
Yep.
This part of the simple answer is moving to bi-weekly instead of weekly cadence, but I think that there's something broader, and I'm interested in hearing people's before we go through our thoughts. I'm interested to hear.
Yeah, for sure.
I was going to speak, so I'm unmuted, but apologies for any kid noise in the background. We're babysitting nephews and nieces. Well, one nephew and multiple nieces. Anyway, I want to give a thumbs up to the moving to a bi-weekly or whatever, or monthly or whatever schedule works for everyone. That's absolutely fine with. I'm not able to attend every week myself, obviously. That makes missing one more of an impact, but it's also easier to attend all of them if you know that you don't have that permanent spot. In terms of larger issues, in terms of overlap with other groups, like there was this whole questions about the overlap a while back with whenever the cluster lifecycle group was initially forming. Like, should they be a separate group? Should they be part of Cluster Ops? Then we've got, Justin's on the call. We've got COPS. We've got in the Kubernetes repo, and then there's also other ways of spinning up Kubernetes outside of AWS, obviously. And actually, one of my top questions would probably be about COPS. So there's some overlap there, but I don't think COPS has or necessarily wants to have, for example, an operators meetup that's dedicated to COPS. It might make more sense to have that. But Justin could probably answer that question a lot better than I could.
I'm very. COPS is intended for real-world operators. I would love to overlap with this group more, and if you want a Q&A session on COPS as it applies to operators, we can either take some time here, or we can, not necessarily today, or we can do a separate session, whatever is more appropriate. I'm sort of dropping in, so I don't know the SIG rules, but the SIG cluster lifecycle is more like SIG cluster dev, and this is more like, so that's more like where we argue about like how we implement. what was it say? It was like whether we should use the client Go interfaces in mocks or something like that. It's like that's my view of the distinction of SIG cluster lifecycle versus SIG cluster ops. Like, cluster lifecycle is about like developer topics that hopefully will make life better for SIG cluster, for the operators as represented in SIG cluster ops. But I think that we should take more input from you guys in terms of what you need.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Josh.
Okay, I think that's actually great, and that's one of the main arguments for keeping this informal group. Which, by the way, the rules of the SIG, and I've missed a few. So unless there's been some massive changes that I missed, there aren't any real formal rules, and it's more like people just try not to interrupt each other too much. Sorry, but and whoever shows up and has a topic they want to talk about that seems related, and that other people are interested in talking about, is what ends up happening. But if and I, as an operator who also happens to be a dev, but most of my dev contributions are in the ecosystem, not directly to Kubernetes. So, but as an operator who is using TOPS right now, I do have some questions, but I also have been through and continue to evaluate other options for spinning up our clusters. And right now we're in AWS, for example, but I don't plan on staying only in AWS for any longer than I have to. I want to go multi-cloud as quickly as reasonably possible, but that's not necessarily the highest priority for my organization. So we'll see how fast that actually happens. Anyway, I had talked way too much, and Rob, you should say whatever you were going to say.
What I was going to say is we love demos. We just like to schedule them so that we can tell people they're going to happen. The ad hoc ones don't pull an audience if people want to see it. So that's my only comment.
If it would be useful, then I would be very happy to do a demo of COPS and some of we have some pretty like operator focused features like in our new version, which are about, like private topologies and all that sort of stuff. So no public IPs. So those are really meant for operators. It would be great to show that, have questions, get feedback about what we could do better. And
to an extent, Jason, one of the things that we could do is simply give the community meeting a place to have longer demos. Would actually be a useful thing for cluster ops to be doing. Say, look, like the demo that today, right? You could actually spend, and I know this for a fact, you could spend the whole meeting decomposing that demo and talking about it and drilling into the operational issues that people want to see, and say, look, if we scheduled demos a little bit out in advance, we could literally do that service. Not ironically, I think for no surprise, the on-prem SIG is doing the same thing, and they're basically, because they're bootstrapping, so they're looking for content which ends up being demos. But I think we could provide a service that would be literally, if somebody has a product they're going to demo it, and we're going to decompose about the operational impacts of it. Everything from Helm and the stuff that you've done around Helm to COPS, Kubadmin, right? Those, giving those groups a venue to demo it in front of operators, and this is how we actually use it. It's probably useful.
Yeah, I agree. This really gets at the heart of. So I've been doing work offline. Two community meetings ago, I got paired with Caleb from CoreOS to kind of talk about this PM group and them forming a SIG and all that stuff, and also my concerns that we're becoming increasingly dispersed on things that should be cross-cutting. So instead of having more visibility across of like-minded SIGs, we're actually getting less and less because people can't attend all of them, and so there's very little cross-pollination happening. And it's not going to hit the streets yet, but I'm going to be making a relatively major and broad sweeping change in terms of a proposal about how SIGs and the entire community is organized. So actually it'll be Caleb and myself doing that. But essentially what I think that the mandate of this group, the mandate of SIG Cluster Ops is humongous. And you would think that given the breadth and width of that, we would have people just clamoring here to do stuff. And I think that the fact that that's not happening represents a critical risk for the success of Kubernetes as a whole. So we need to fix this problem stat, because this is a really big problem. That's my 2 cents.
I watched this pattern evolve in OpenStack where the operators couldn't get together. The challenge that I'm seeing is that we're doing a lot of cargo work, and that's where we're going to hang out in cargo to talk to people about operating cargo. And the problem is, I think that, because I also watch the lifecycle group, I watch, I see what goes on in COPS, I'm watching on-prem. It's, from that perspective, a lot of these issues are very common. The operators should be able to find commonalities around all this stuff.
We have this problem.
Cycles.
Sorry, we definitely have that exact problem with, we just started a COPS channel, and like there's COPS and there's SIG AWS, and then things that are definitely COPS, like happen in SIG Cluster Ops or SIG Cluster Lifecycle, and things get repeated in the different channels. And yeah, I would love to have one channel, but Slack is not going to work for that.
This is also a problem at Mozilla. Like we still use IRC really, really heavily for most everything, but then of course there's teams who've gone to Slack, and there's multiple channels within each Slack channel, and then those are invite only. They're not as open, so there's some issues there, especially with a lot of the non-technical teams who are not are intimidated by IRC or whatever. They'll get on Slack, but yeah, we have the same problems where there's too many silos of information, too many pieces getting isolated from one another and not coordinating correctly and getting things done. So that's actually one of the things at an infrastructure level, at an operator level, that I'm taking a personal interest in trying to work around. So one of the things, I shared a link in the chat to our infra, which is just some bare, like this is just getting started. We like a lot of people, we started off with a private repo and did our own thing. Now we're porting, I'm like, wait, okay, let's finally bite the bullet. Let's move everything over into a public repo as much as possible. It's just some scripting around. At this point, it's now scripting around COPS. We were on Kubernetes AWS, and none of that history is actually in this repo. That's in a different repo. But the COPS stuff is in there, and then we're using the Terraform output, and we spin up Deis, and we do some stuff on the Deis side that's not currently automated inside the Deis repo. We use some Terraform workarounds to move the state into AWS services, like putting the database in RDS, putting stuff in S3, and generating buckets there. So I've got a lot of feedback on both COPS and Kubernetes AWS, which we were using for a while. And I'm planning on doing more evaluations, even if we're going to have to switch away from COPS for anything running outside of AWS. I mean, it's just not there there's no real reason for it if we were spinning up on Google. Arguably for GCE instead of GKE, but I mean, that's kind of what GKE is there for, right? And if we're going on bare metal, which there's the various reasons why we may or may not do that, but I'm leaning towards that being last. But anyway, then we're going to need yet another thing, and that's one of the reasons why Digital Rebar and Racken are looking. They're overkill for just spinning up on AWS. They're exactly what I want long term. So in terms of being able to spin up, having an underlay and everything, composable underlay. Yes, I'm drinking a little bit of
making me smile. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, it is as often as the case. We're all seeing different facets of the same problem.
Mm-hmm.
But it ends up being an operator experience, right? It's
everything ends up being an operator experience.
No, wait, hold on. Sorry, let me be specific. This ends up being an adoption problem for the community as a whole, which is what I was hoping when we started all this we would address. Is what we don't want to have happen is you before you can use Kubernetes, you have to make an opinion about which installer you're going to use, and that hurts the community from an ease of implementation perspective, right? They're still going to end up picking an installer. And I don't know that that's avoidable, but it feels like we end up, use mine, because that first experience ends up being the winner, and then that undermines the operations as a whole. I don't know how to solve it. It's a pattern.
I think the selling point, which is what we should probably be focusing on of Kubernetes, is that after you've done your installation into your infrastructure, which may require some special Snowflake stuff to get it running on your hardware, in your data center with your restrictions, or you pick AWS and that works, or some other cloud provider. You've got all of your deployments of your actual apps, the stuff that you actually care about, has a common set of abstractions, and that's what we and the other thing is, like, we're not just targeting operators, but operators who also are devs, or devs who happen to be operators. I'm avoiding this stupid buzzword, but
it's SRE teams. I mean, really, the new word for that is SRE.
Well, that's another less popular word, but yes, or acronym or whatever. But the whole point is, like, we're not just operating it; we are actually developing stuff, either with it, on top of it, or contributing patches upstream, and that's important. But I think the overall architecture and getting the core concepts across to both people with more of an operational background and people with more of a development background, teaching that subset, teaching why these are beneficial, and here's how you can take this and apply it in different environments, and why you want to do that. That's one of the things that I'm kind of focusing on. I'm putting together a presentation for there's a Mozilla Developer Roadshow that I'm going to be giving an open infrastructure talk in. So I haven't put together the slides yet, or I'll be happy to share them right now. But I'll be happy to share them, either just drop a link to the slides or talk about it at one of the next meetings or whatever, once I have more of my ducks in a row. And Slack, I don't have to go through and give a presentation. I'm willing to if you want me to.
It'd be great to talk. I mean, but this is one of our goals, was to get people like you to say, this is what we're considering, these are our needs, this is what we're trying to evaluate. And you did that, I mean, for some of the first meetings. It was amazing, right? We captured some really good notes, and I was super excited about the direction that we were going there. And now, I don't know, maybe Jason, one of the things to do is to, especially as your plans coalesce around some more structure, is to have other SIGs sponsor operators to come and talk about, it's not just a demo, but hey, send somebody over here, we'll talk about this generically. It's like, it should be neutral territory.
Yeah.
One of the things I also suggest, real quick, are you recording this right now?
It is, we are. You want me to pause it?
Or no. Does it go to YouTube, or does it go to our video channel?
It goes to the Kubernetes channel overall. It definitely goes to YouTube. Hold on, I'll throw the channel where all this stuff ends up before it hits the community stuff.
So I want to pause and say, I don't want to do too much meta. I actually do want, since Justin is here, I would like to do some talking about COPS, because I don't know if he and I will both be at the next meeting or the one after that. And I'd like to give him an opportunity to talk a little bit about that. And just really quickly, as on the meta subject of this group, I think that the main thing is we're actually getting, it's not about the number of attendees on a given week or month or whatever. It's about the quality of the conversation that those who do show up have. And if it's an interesting conversation that you have a recording of, that you can then promote and link to, and whatever little nuggets of information are in that conversation, those get propagated long after the initial meeting. That's my take on it anyway.
That's a good point. I felt that way about the etcd migration stuff that we did. I was pointing people to it in Slack.
Yes, etcd, that's actually one of the things that I'm still, that's actually a COPS question. Segueing into, Justin, you mind if I just ask you a few questions directly?
No problem. We can always talk offline if we bore everyone else, but no problem.
Well, I think it's actually part of a broader, it's beyond just COPS. It's actually some architectural decisions that were made. So in the latest version that I think you just addressed it in this latest version. So this is more of a pointing out, maybe this is just pointing out something I'd like to say thank you for something you just shipped then, actually. So one of the limitations when we first started testing COPS was we had to, if we wanted HA, which we did, we had to spin it up. We were limited to spinning up in AWS regions that had 3 AZs. This basically limited what we could actually use COPS for, because what we wanted to be able to do is spin it up in there's lots of more regions that only have 2.
Yes.
And you do a more limited form of HA with either two separate clusters, one running in each AC, and then you can share either load balancing between them or DNS failover, which there's actually some design questions on that about when you would make that trade-off. And then of course, but ultimately, if you want true HA, you're going to be going multi-region anyway, so you're going to, no matter what, you're going to be dealing with multiple clusters, and most likely you're going to be doing federation, although you don't strictly need it in order to just have HA, global HA. We've had it for a while, which is centralized management via Jenkins that just deploys individual clusters, and that's still what we're doing actually. But as we were making these design trade-offs, one of the interesting things is actually a difference between COPS and kubeAWS out of the box, which I liked. One of the reasons why I switched was having the etcd co-located on the masters and running that as and you're doing that through protocube or protocube. How do you pronounce it?
Let's not argue about that. Protocube is what I call it, but sure.
Protocube. Well, how you pronounce it is what I care about, because I want to use what is correct to you, because I don't know. All right, so protocube is managing etcd, but it's not managing. Actually, would you mind giving us all an explanation of why you chose to write protocube and what are some of the design decisions you made on where you put etcd and how you were managing it? And
yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, I think it's definitely. Sorry. Yeah, no, it's definitely come up a bunch of times. And I think there was some other guidance out there which said you should run etcd separately. In the first version, as we are being recorded, I will say I messed up, but I was trying to give guidance, trying to guide people that, when you're running HA, you probably want to run multiple AZs, and then obviously, actually, some people want to run 3 masters in 1 AZ. That's legitimate, and some people want to run in 2 AZs because they only have 2 AZs. So yes, we fixed that. Protocube. So Protocube is called that because it is supposed to eventually move somewhere into a shared component. So the problem it is trying to address is on AWS, we want to run our masters in an auto scaling group so that we can do lights off recovery. We can turn off everything and it will come back. And that means that you need a component whose job, because of the limitations of auto scaling groups, you need a component whose job it is to reattach the master volumes. That component is Protocube. I had hoped it was a prototype for things we want to get into kubelet, but kubelet went a sort of different direction, so that's looking harder. SIG Cluster Lifecycle has not yet hit this issue, so it is still only in COPS, but I would love to get it, somewhere. I'd love to have the discussion about can we make kubelet able to mount volumes and tolerate it when just basically have kubelet do that. But for the moment, it is a COPS component that basically allows you to discover and attach persistent volumes. And then the other thing it does is it will actually configure DNS, which is our discovery mechanism. GCE has a notion of a machine that has a given IP, but AWS with auto scaling groups does not. We could have done elastic IP remapping, but then we'd have been locked into AWS only, and we would one day like to be on GCE and bare metal. And so it is nice to have an option that DNS seems like a universal discovery mechanism that works pretty well. It has had some, it is a big barrier for people getting started from zero to have to I need a real domain name and I have to set it up Route 53. And we have learned a lot about that, and it is painful, but I feel like once you do it, it is good. But that is sort of why we have Protocube. And then I will say the other piece we have is NodeUp, which that is essentially the on node component whose job it is to install Docker and kubelet is one thing. But the other thing it does is it takes component config, which is sort of the model that COPS uses for config of components. There we go. Yeah, but it uses the official component config, or it tries to use the official component config schema, and component config is not yet done. So for now, what we do is node up, maps it to flags. One day, component config will be done. All the tools will write in component config, I'm sure. COPS will do it. And then, I mean, I think this is the kumbaya of like how we get around the fact that, you know, we have all these installers is it's like COPS becomes very simple at that point. It is simply like I configure, here's a default component config. It's perfectly adequate for getting up my cluster. And then ideally, I don't even have to use COPS if I want to reconfigure my component config. I kubectl edit kube API server.config, right? Or whatever the command would be. And once the more we can get into Kubernetes itself, and the more we can make it so that the installation is simple, I think that is how we square the circle of this. So that COPS becomes, or COPS on AWS becomes like, let's install the pieces on AWS that are specific to AWS, like bring up a VPC, bring up your subnets, your NAT gateways, whatever it is, and then launch a pretty standard installation that is like a bunch of components that then are tweakable directly through the Kubernetes API. And I think kubeadm, for all that I disagree with it, is heading in that direction. It is, you know, it is going to be that sort of piece and is working on that.
Can you expand on that a little bit, on the thing that you disagree with?
Oh, I'd be interested to hear that, have that as a discussion too, because
the kubeadm is not I don't know, just that we should, you know, we're like a year in, and I would have hoped that we would be further along the lines of component config and those sort of things, rather than some of the other pieces that I just hope would be further along. It feels like we can. I feel like we're now having the right sort of discussions about like, what do we do about boot cube? So CoreOS has this, you know, Kates on Kates boot cube concept, and that enables upgrades and more self-management, you know, management through Kubernetes. Like, how do we bring that into kubeadm, which is essentially just, you know, pretty much static generation of the manifests, not yet using component config really. Like, how do we get component config as the primary component configuration mechanism?
So just to back a little bit on the component config, when I've been following a lot of stuff pretty closely, and I actually have not heard of component config before this meeting. So could you give a little, when did that land, or when is that supposed to land, and what is the status of component config? Because it seems very ephemeral to me.
So component config is a strongly typed, schematized representation of the configuration. And I think for a long time now, I want to say like 2 or 3 releases, if not more, you have been able to get a read-only view of the configuration of certain, if not all, components like API server. What you cannot do is you cannot write to that configuration. You cannot say run with this configuration. So it's sort of like a one-way street. And I think there is, Taufan is working on kubelet and making that work, which is a great place to start, not least because it's sort of the, you know, the most complicated, right? It is basically about putting, once we have the configuration in, it will be probably a config map, would be my guess, and then you'll be able to edit it as a typed object. And I think, yeah,
so just like kubelet detects when manifest files change and reloads them, it would basically go to the etcd server or through the API server and reload its configuration.
These are yes. These are the things that are the complicated things. Like, how do we combine? Because you want a static bootstrap config, you want a means of discovery through the API server. Yeah. You want that. Yeah, it is complicated.
Well, and it's the argument that I've made about this is it's redundant with some of the ways people are used to configuring stuff, and I don't think either you or I have been silent on our concerns on the kubadmin pieces. So
no, I mean, it is definitely redundant in terms of like there are ways to achieve this today using, you know, the many tools that are out there.
Chef, Puppet, Ansible, Salt, blah, blah, blah.
Exactly. And then the layer things that build on top of it, like Cargo or Cops, which is built like a parallel universe, right? It is definitely achievable. I think the vision would be that in order to get everyone having a consistent experience, regardless of whether they prefer Chef, Ansible, Puppet, whatever, then we put more configuration into Kubernetes. That does mean, your comfort with your Chef, all the comfort you have with your Chef deployment processes does not apply to Kubernetes. You have to learn a new tool.
And that's so my concern with this is that it's a very Kubernetes centric approach to the world. And to me, as you know, from the cluster ops perspective, Kubernetes is one piece of things that somebody's running in their infrastructure. It's not the only thing. And so having Kubernetes specific configuration, it strikes me as adding complexity into something that is a well understood problem.
I agree with you. I guess one thing that I think maybe we could do that would make both sides happy is your existing tooling could generate a file, right? Could generate the file and you don't have to use component config, I guess. But honestly, like this is still like in process. It's been in process for a long time. I think the issues of like merging configs is tricky. All these issues are hard. And I encourage you to search for component config and the work that I'm going to put it in here.
Yeah, I completely understand the validation, and it is an attractive concept to be able to say we're going to take all of the nodes in a Kubernetes cluster and we're going to have their configuration be managed through the API because they're all talking to the API already. There's a bootstrapping problem and there's a operational normalcy problem. But it's just like I watched people spin up Docker using systemd. Go, like, all right, whatever. Josh, did you get your questions answered?
I got that question answered, and then I have more I'd be happy to ask, or we can move on to other people's questions.
Let me pause for a second because I think that this is a great use of the agenda for today. At some point, we do need to talk about some ops summit planning. It looks like SIG on-prem is talking about doing something around the OpenStack summit. We might want to go back to defrag. I will take an action item to talk to the organizers of defrag, or sorry, Glue. It's Glue this time, and see if we can get space or something like that because I have a relationship with them.
Yeah, and I think I'm pretty sure we're sponsoring, so that shouldn't be an issue.
Yeah, I think, and Racken isn't it at the Deus level, but it's definitely, we're also sponsoring. So.
Okay, well, if you speak to anybody, you can just say, look, you got people from 2 sponsor groups here, so.
Yeah, no, I think it makes.
So that'd be good.
So that one we need to. There's a time element, so I just want to make sure we do it. Other than that, digging in, keeping where we're going is good.
Yeah, I think it's a great discussion. I'm really fascinated by it. So.
Quick question on both of those conferences. Are the CFPs for both of those conferences open, or have they already closed?
CFP for OpenStack is closed on Monday. Glue, I have no idea.
Pretty sure it's closed. Let me find out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Although I know for a fact that if you sponsor, if you act as a sponsor, they still probably have speaking slots available for paid sponsorship.
I'm not personally interested in sponsoring conferences, and I've already got a couple other conferences that I'm working with Mozilla to sponsor. So
gotcha.
my plate's full on that front.
That one there, it's a good. I'll tell you, because I make these decisions for RecN. It's that one actually is a good ROI for audience cost and content. It's a great show. Is anybody planning to go to the Scale 15 show? I can't. My travel schedule's a little bit too booked up to go, but I was thinking of sending somebody on the team. Going to be jealous. It's going to be a great show. Southern California. No shark tornadoes or anything this year. I managed to slip that one in.
Yeah. Can I ask a more cops question?
Back to cops, please.
All right. So in terms of the public versus private architectures, which you recently shipped some additional support for as well, and you can spin up a private cluster with a bastion, where the bastion is just a separate dedicated node, or you can spin up a public one and have SSH exposed directly on public ones. One of the things that I actually want is a mix and a combination of the two for various reasons. But as we're doing the customization, the way we're doing it is we're using the Terraform output, and then we're customizing the Terraform, and then we do lots of things with the Terraform. And as I've noticed the way that you are adding options, you're mainly focused on the direct API interactions model, as opposed to through the Terraform output. And the Terraform output, there's several open issues which may have been resolved by the time I'm having this conversation. So, because I haven't looked at the COPS repo in a few days, at least, probably since last week. But anyway, there's talk of making the Terraform output more modular or changing some things. And I'm wondering about how do you prioritize and decide with the different models of the direct API interaction versus generating Terraform, letting Terraform apply to its thing?
Yeah, so guilty as charged. I do not test the Terraform model as thoroughly, but we did a ton of work to make sure that the Terraform model round trips. So the intention is you should be able to create it with either direct or Terraform and do the other, and it should not change. It should be a no up. That is actually surprisingly hard, but that's what we had to do. So
and
you and I talked about it being hard, as I recall.
My question is also not just how did you do it. I recognize that it was hard, but how is it that you decided that was a necessary problem for you to solve versus just doing one or the other? Because I assume there's some really good reasons that you did all this work.
So it is really nice to have Terraform output because it enables people to sort of audit what we're doing. Mm-hmm. And it lets you, particularly if you have some Git tricks going on, you can edit things and make customizations.
Right.
It is much more convenient to, or it's much more convenient for me to run it directly. Mm-hmm. It is, so those are sort of it's the same as sort of the private topology. Private topologies are, expensive. They're much more complicated. They are generally hard and sort of enterprisey. And I tend to spend most time running on the simpler public topology, which is faster and easier. But they are still very important. And if we find a problem, we will fix it. And there are a lot of people that are really who test that a lot and do a lot more of that. It is certainly interesting when we go to look at adding more clouds to think about doing only Terraform or doing Terraform out first, and then maybe phase 1B, say, well, can we, is the state of Terraform such that we could embed Terraform and use it directly? I think we already do embed Terraform for its formatting library, so we might as well just actually call into it. Yeah. So that would, I think though the COPS is actually, I don't remember the word, but it is agnostic to the output format. So in theory, you could output CloudFormation. In theory, you could output pick your poison, chef. I don't know what the favorite is, but you know that was sort of a design point that we wanted to be like flexible as to output as to that syntax and not tied to one, so that people would not like rule out cops purely on the basis that it doesn't do their preferred output format. We haven't seen a huge amount of demand for CloudFormation, which seems to be like the number 2 for AWS like infrastructure bring up. So that's sort of why we only have Terraform right now. That might be different if we do Azure, for example. Where we do Azure, like I can imagine that people might want their thing that is like Terraform, right?
At a certain point, though, you as a maintainer have to make a decision that you're not going to give everyone what they want, and so you can say, no, we're not going to do CloudFormation because that's a pain to work with. That's why we're using Terraform. I'm not putting those words in your mouth. I'll say that. That's one of the main reasons we switched away from Kubernetes to COPS was the Terraform output. It was much easier to deal with than the CloudFormation output.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's tricky. There are always people that want different formats and can make very compelling cases. And if the case is compelling enough, the reason we have the model, the sort of meta model. So the direct API is a manifestation of a meta model, and the reason we have the meta model is so that it is not incredibly hard to generate CloudFormation or Terraform. And most of the work in supporting Terraform is actually figuring out how to express it in ways that are that are compatible with declarative things like Terraform. So in theory, it should be easier to add CloudFormation output. It is easier to go from 0 or from 1 to 2 is harder than going from 2 to 3.
I have a question for you about what you actually need from the nodes after you've done, right? So does COPS then SSH into the nodes, or
no? That's node.
COPS expect?
That is what NodeUp does. So NodeUp is the on node agent, and it is the thing that installs Protocube and installs Docker and installs the manifests based on the component configuration, which is stored in S3. So that's sort of how we communicate between the two. So COPS writes the configuration, the desired configuration of the nodes effectively to an S3 bucket. The nodes come up configured with basically pointing to the S3 bucket, and they read the an S3 path, read the configuration and apply it. And so that NodeUp is the piece that feels like Ansible or Jeff or whatever it is, right? But I'm hoping we can actually get into, well, if component config takes off, will be very small.
So I can tell you based on that workflow that an integration with Rebar would be probably a day or two of work.
That'd be cool.
Yes, you guys should do that.
Because literally what you're describing is all the underlay pieces. Josh, you're welcome to grab a paddle.
I said you guys for a reason. You know what? Actually, I'll tell you what. If you guys do it, I'll be happy to test it.
It's an interesting
and promote it.
Because really, what you just need a file injected in the right spot to a machine that's configured, and then you need to pull down a couple. You need some stuff installed, and then you just need to lay things out. If you have a bash script that does it, that's pretty trivial, and we're good at injecting files into places.
Actually, I'd like to take my suggestion a step further. Jason, you should talk to Chris and see if she can help with this whole, and then get Racken plus COPS plus Deis spun up on AWS, well documented, and we'll be happy to test it. And if it works well, we'll use it and promote it.
No big deal. It'll be done tomorrow. No.
I'm not asking for any commitments. I'm just throwing that out there. If your mission, should you choose to accept it.
Well, so Chris is active as a SIG leader or co-SIG leader, so I'm sure this will come up on our radar. So yeah, I mean, this is the thing, right? It's this sort of, the thing that drives me crazy about these things is that there's always a desire for convergence. Like we all want to converge on the solution, but then that's almost an anti-pattern. And so the trick is to, instead of having convergence, figure out how you can provide bespoke convergences for people that have different use cases.
I don't want anything I'll do the bespoke stuff myself.
Well, that's what I mean.
Everything's bespoke. That's the
yeah.
I want the stuff that is not specific to my use case. I want that. There's certain things I want. I want it to be really easy to hand to other people and say, here, spin this up on your AWS account or on your servers or whatever, and then play with it and and that's why Kubanium's okay for initial prototype. Kops is great for getting you got your 15 minutes. Later you got your stuff. We've added a little bit of automation to spin Kops and Deis, and so it's more production ready. But mostly, but the key thing that I'm having to do with all of these tools really is they get that 80% solved. That's almost production ready, and then I'm like spending 80% of my time, well, no, more than 80% of my time, getting that last 20% of production readiness for what we actually need it to for matching our security and scalability and other requirements. But I think that's a common experience. So, and part of the thing that I'm trying to do at Mozilla is promote, hey, we picked the winner here with Kubernetes, and we've got people using Mesos, we've got people using homegrown, several different groups, each of which have homegrown automation solutions, some of which are open source, some of which aren't for various reasons. But I'd like to, selfishly, I'd like my organization to be more efficient in the way that it uses cloud, other people's computers, and spend more of that money on people and less on, Amazon bills for inefficiency.
Hallelujah on that.
Yeah. Anyway.
That's interesting. That's really cool. And this, Jason, or Josh, going back to your point, quality conversation is important. We're actually figuring out interesting stuff. It's good. It's very good. Cool. Are you out of questions, or do you have another one up your sleeve?
Oh, I have unlimited questions, but we have.
So
I actually realized this is office hours.
I have an important question, which is, Justin, what's the plan for handling that IOPS issue with etcd?
I don't know. I was actually popping in to see whether anyone was going to talk about it here.
That seems like a really bad problem, especially if you're running any kind of containerized etcd.
Oh,
whichever one is, right? Or
background. You guys want to give a little bit of background, and then I'll put it.
Can you drop a link?
Let me see if I can find a link.
I'm assuming this is etcd3, not 2.
This is etcd2, and it's every cluster out there that's 1.4 plus.
I think it applies to etcd3 as well, right? It is not even etcd independent.
It isn't etcd at all. It's Kubernetes.
Oh.
What is the issue?
Let me find it.
There's a quorum read.
Yep.
Right, and we do a lot of quorum reads.
Mm-hmm. That is correct.
I saw something about this in OpenStack is having problems with it killing their networking.
Yeah, find that.
Is it 41143? I have that open.
It is 41143. That's correct.
All right, can you drop a link to that, and
You got it, Justin?
I just pasted it.
Oh, great. Thanks.
So, audit all quorum reads. Oh, yes, that would be bad.
They're saying it actually is fixed in etcd 3.1.
Oh, okay.
Well, 3.1 though, not the one we're running.
No, yeah, but there's at least hope.
There is hope, yes.
So how quickly will, so yeah, actually, let's take this as a concrete example. So this is actually in, so etcd 3.1.0, if you're wanting to do an upgrade of, let's say you have a running cluster in production, or clusters, actually, but you have at least one, it's got data in an etcd, and you're needing to do an upgrade. Do you do an in-place upgrade, or do you spin up a new etcd cluster, do a backup and restore, and move all the services over to the other cluster because it's just too dangerous?
So I don't know what Justin's going to say, but I can tell you that I actually did the upgrade and documented it as I did it, and it was fine.
Awesome.
My view is it is a scary process, but people have done a lot of work on it, but I'm still going to wait for GCE to do it first. But that was my plan. This may put a spanner in that plan.
Yeah, the upgrade is really not, it's not a big deal. I think Chorus did a fantastic job as far as the coding and.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a concern that if something goes wrong, that like it would be really hard to.
Yeah, in one of my test scenarios, I did kill everything in etcd just to see what cluster behavior was like, and it was beautiful. It was a wasteland.
I'm still at the point where I'm a little nervous to do. I'm too nervous to do in-place upgrades for our stuff, even though we have multiple clusters. I'm like, I'm just gonna focus on making it easy to spin up new clusters and transfer service, because I'm just paranoid, I guess. But that's one of the main things that we're kind of sorting out right now, is like, okay, so do we need to wait for let's say we're on COPS, which we are, but the way that the etcd upgrade would be handled normally, I'm not even sure how you would do an in-place upgrade on COP, like if there's any COP specific tooling other than just
we only support etcd2 right now in COPS. There was an issue which I found yesterday, which was like, oh, we should probably think about etcd3. This now is, I guess, a priority issue.
Yeah.
It would be edit the cluster, and then we'll have to figure out like whether we detect that in special case an etcd upgrade change as like a backup, and we want to do backups anyway, so maybe like we should just turn them on, and I don't know.
Yeah. Actually, I haven't. Do you have backups automated inside COPS yet?
We do the same as KubeUp. So KubeUp does not do backups, so we do not do backups. So
that's one of those 20% things that everybody's got to figure out their own backups. That's okay.
Well, I mean, if anyone could, that is, you don't have to figure out your own backups. If you want to contribute that, if you do it and contribute it, we will very gratefully take it. No one has yet.
I will. That's one of the things on my team's little board.
The cargo team's talking about something very similar, by the way, which is taking, if you detect you're rerunning in an indemnipotent sense, it'll grab a backup somewhere.
All right. I have a hard stop in 2 minutes, and that's probably everyone else has a similar hard stop. But I just want to say I've really enjoyed this conversation. So thanks everybody for showing up.
Yeah, thank you for showing up.
Yeah,
and thanks, Justin.
That was great, and definitely open those issues on COPS if you want to, at least to discuss. And I think we should. I'll have a look at RackN, see if I can understand how we could make COPS RackN.
Kraken. No,
Yeah,
wait, that's already taken.
That's taken. They switched that to K2 actually. If what you're saying is right, I mean, what we do with rebar is underlay, so we're really agnostic about the stuff you're doing. Our goal is to actually be